Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam and this is a Snow Queen Oakleaf Hydrangea. This is the beautiful white summer flowering, red fall foliaged Snow Queen Oakleaf Hydrangea. Snow Queen Oakleaf Hydrangeas are definitely not dwarfs, but they are smaller than some of the other varieties. This one you can keep under head high, maybe 4 to 5 feet, and probably more like 5 to 6 feet in width, slightly wider than tall. Oakleaf hydrangeas are very cold hardy. These can grow up to zone 5 and down to zone 9. Although a lot of varieties of oakleaf hydrangeas get pretty big, they're really not very fast growing. We probably get less than 6 inches of growth out of these in a single season. Sun or shade is the tricky bit really on oakleaf hydrangeas. People always talk about putting them in woodland gardens, and I really don't think they perform extremely well in deep shade. They also don't perform that well in full sun, but they are adaptable to it. They will not die in the full sun, they just won't thrive. It's that area somewhere in the middle where they can get some direct sun on them, especially helpful if it's morning sun. The area that I'm about to put this in my yard this morning gets a lot of morning sun on it, and then it's in the shade by 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so it's going to get this foliage dried out because they are susceptible to some leaf spot issues. Because of the size of Snow Queen, if you were going to use this one as a foundation plant, it probably needs to be on the corner of your foundation. It does end up losing all of its leaves, but it has a lot of winter interest, so probably not a bad choice for a foundation, especially in colder areas where you may have a few less options. Makes a great woodland garden plant, but I'm not a big fan of putting this thing really in deep shade. So a woodland garden, but out on the edge of it where you can get some direct sun on it during the day. Well, this is a plant that truly has something going on 12 months out of the year. When it leaves out in the spring, it has really nice, beautiful green foliage. By late spring or early summer, it has the flower buds that open into these very large clusters of white flowers, which can also work great as cut flowers or dried flowers as well. When we get to the fall, it starts to put on this beautiful crimson red color, and it holds the leaves for a very long time. It doesn't just color up and drop them like something like a burning bush would. It actually is this color for weeks and weeks. And then when it finally does drop these leaves, sometime probably around December, it has beautiful exfoliating bark down at the bottom, almost crepe myrtle-like. And so it truly does have year-round interest. I don't worry very much when I'm planting one of these oakleaf hydrangeas. They're pretty tough plants. I do leave them mounded up a little bit. They are susceptible to root rot, and therefore I want to keep them up above the grade if I'm in an area that gets kind of regular rainfall. Maybe if you're in a drier climate, you can plant them flush. Just don't end up piling anything up on the stems in the future. I consider oakleaf hydrangeas to be very drought tolerant, much more drought tolerant than the big leaf hydrangeas. But if you let this thing become really dry in the late spring or early summer, it will cost you some flowers during the summer months, probably end up costing you some of the fall foliage as well. So this is a plant that, like I say, once it's established, it really doesn't need anything from you to live, but it may need some extra water in abnormally dry times to perform well. Oakleaf hydrangeas don't need a whole lot of extra fertilizer, but I tend to fertilize everything in my yard with a slow release fertilizer in the late winter or early spring, and it will give you some additional new growth, probably help with the size of the flowers during the season. And of course, any leaves you're adding during the year are going to end up looking like this in the fall and early winter. Like the big leaf hydrangeas, oakleaf hydrangeas bloom on last year's growth, and you can actually see the buds on the side of the stems here that are going to end up producing the flowers next year. So if you're doing any pruning on these, you can prune them in the late summer or early fall as they finish flowering, but try not to go very far down the stem. Just pick one of the buds on the stem right there and cut down just above it, because that's where the flowers are going to initiate. The last 4 or 5 inches of the season's growth aren't going to flower next year, but I've got 1, 2, 3 just on this little cane right here that have the potential to flower next year. I've never really seen a lot of chewing pest on oakleaf hydrangeas. I have had scale on the stems on them in the nursery before. Just really wasn't that big of a deal. Most of the issues with these tend to be root rot if they're in an area that just stays wet all the time, especially if you live in an area like I do that has kind of a clay base to the soil. I make sure I mound this thing up high and dry, and then I don't have any problem with that. They get a lot of foliar spotting. This one stayed clean most of the year, and this leaf is still in great shape, but a lot of times by this time of year there was a lot of spotting on the leaf. If you get those kind of problems, those foliar problems, make sure that when the leaves drop off, you're cleaning them all up Don't let any of that stuff stay around the base of the plant or it'll just hop right back up on it the following season. If you look up deer resistant plants, Oakleaf hydrangea will almost always be on the list, but I've had many people tell me that this plant is not deer resistant. So keep that in mind. I don't believe the deer resistant list, or maybe that person's deer is different than these other people's deer, but if you have deer issue, heavy deer grazing in the winter time, almost certainly this is a plant that may end up damaged. So what are you waiting for? Even you can grow the beautiful white flowering, red fall foliaged Snow Queen Oakleaf Hydrangea. Thank you for watching my video, and if it was helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for future videos.